The best way to fail at any game development is to never try, but you could say that if you never try, you'll never fail. So let's assume you do try. Here's how to fail. Alright, when making a story for your game, obviously to fail, you just need to write a terrible story. Well, I got good news and bad news. The bad news is I'm not going to tell you how to fail at writing a story. But don't worry, the good news is there's a channel called Terrible Writing Advice that for some reason everyone keeps comparing this series to. And I'm not sure why. His channel is full of sarcasm and mine is a totally serious tutorial series. Anyway, Terrible Writing Advice is a great spot for learning how to write terrible stories. So once you learn how to write your terrible story, come back here and I will tell you how to fail at incorporating your story into a game. And we would already be off to a good start, because if you do it this way, we'd be writing your story as a separate process from developing your game, which is great. You wouldn't want to do both at the same time anyway. It might get confusing. When making your story, there's no need to connect it intricately with your game. Showing the story through the game mechanics, the level design, characters, environment, or game objectives to reflect and ultimately tell the story. I mean, you could try to take advantage of the medium and tell your story in the unique way that only a game can. You know, by letting the player experience the story taking place around them and play a part in it. Nah. Books and movies are the trusted storytelling methods, so tell the story through large walls of text, or in skippable 10-minute long cutscenes. That's why people play games after all, so they can read a book, with little breaks to play a quick round of a bejeweled clone, or so they can watch a really long movie interrupted frequently by a walking simulator. A good game story could provide motivation to achieve the in-game objectives, but you know what would be better? Not doing that. A good game story could also provide the means to explain complex game mechanics, but you know what would be even better? Not doing that as well. A good game story could also bring players into a complex moral dilemma, allowing them to experience difficult situations and hard choices that could test and strengthen their moral framework. But you know what would be even better than that? All you need to do is believe in yourself. But I mean like a lot. I mean like fat head levels of believing in yourself. You're the best writer ever and you wrote the story. And you know it's a good story because, well, you wrote it. So there's no need to sacrifice any part of your story to improve your game. I mean, we wouldn't want to use the story to enhance the thing that you're actually making. Now, suppose you're trying to make a story-driven game. Your story will either be linear or non-linear. If it's linear, then you should give the player the illusion of their choices making a difference. But in reality, the plot proceeds exactly the same no matter what. And if your story is non-linear, then it's going to be a little more difficult, because the thing that you gotta do is make an even greater effort to trick the player into thinking their choices are making a difference, but in reality the plot proceeds exactly the same no matter what. Except this time you also have two endings that hinge on a single binary choice right at the end, where one path is obviously the good choice and the other is obviously the evil choice. Yeah, that'll work well. In fact, all choices the player is given should be only extremes, because it's much easier to work your story into a game if the player can only interact with it in predictable ways. It's really difficult to create a system that can provide analog choices to a player, so don't bother. And even harder still is a system that can detect and react to potentially unforeseen actions by the player. That would require more than a single if statement. On top of this, whatever story emerges would most certainly not be the perfectly curated story you wrote. Alternatively, it is possible to tell a handcrafted story without giving the player any ability to impact the outcome. The player will be in the story, but won't be able to do much more than focus on the objectives of the game, immersed in the events taking place around them, shaping the path they are compelled to take. An epic saga like this, with gripping events revealed through the environment, character, and level design, can bring an unbound sense of wonder to the player. But nah, level design is its own episode worth of failure, so cutscenes and text walls it is. Ah yeah, they're gonna love it. And of course, if you follow all these instructions carefully, you are bound to succeed at failure. Thanks for watching. Fun fact, this series was originally going to be just one video, a one-off, but as I was writing the script I realized there was just too much to fit into one video. So instead I carefully planned out and created 617 episodes that are all backlogged, and I'm just releasing them as if I was making them one at a time. True story.